Hello guys, welcome to Java Fanatics um, channel. As you can see guys, the topic of our today's discussion is the Java language. So today I'm going to walk you guys through the Java language so that by the end of this video tutorial, you pretty much know everything about the Java language as a whole. So guys, Java language was developed by James Gosling in 1991. The reason for him to develop Java was because he found C++ to be difficult, to be complex for an average developer to understand. So he wanted to come up with something that is more simpler and yet verbose and yet more powerful. So Java added some by then, Java added some new good features such as garbage collection. It removed pointers, stuff like that. So garbage collection, guys, is used to clean up objects that are not used in memory, that are in the heap in Java. And most programmers can attest to the fact that the use of pointers is actually something that needs a strong developer, quite complex to understand. Another thing that I found to be funny is that even C++ itself, when it was invented, the guy who invented it wanted to have a better C because C also had its own problems. So we see, guys, that when a new language is developed, it has more good features which the old language didn't have. And in 1995, Sun Microsystems acquired Java from James Gosling. Later on in 2010, Oracle acquired Java. And that was a year before Java 7 could be released. So another thing that is important to mention is that, guys, Java is statically typed, a statically typed language. So that means if you have a variable that has been declared as an int, it will always be an int. At runtime, there is no way that object, that variable will change to something else, maybe to a string. There would be, in fact, you wouldn't even compile that program if that variable was changed somewhere in the code. The compiler wouldn't even allow you to do that. But JavaScript, guys, is more powerful. It's a dynamically typed language. So if you declare a variable as something else at runtime or later on in the code, it can become to be something else. If it was a number, it can become a string, it can become an object, it can become um, a null, it can become sorts of different things. That's what we mean by JavaScript is dynamically typed. So Java, guys, to know that this is a Java file, normally you will have a .java file as a file extension for that .java file. Then you know that this particular file is a Java file. And for you to have a code that can be executed by a Java runtime, which is JVM, you will first of all need to compile that Java file. Well, in layman terms, we can say you're converting the Java file into a .class file. And a .class file, it's called a bytecode in the Java language. So what normally for you to do that, you use the JDK. So the JDK comes with a conglomerate of commands that you can basically use to assist you in the Java development. So one of those command tool is the Java C. So Java C, you use it to compile your Java files into bytecode. So that bytecode would be run on the JVM. So the JVM will execute instructions in the bytecode in that .class file line by line. So .class file is a list of instructions line by line which the JVM understands. So guys, there are three main components of Java, which is the JVM, JDK, and the JRE. So guys, for us developers, devs who develop Java applications, we definitely need the JDK. Without the JDK, you cannot be an effective Java developer. You wouldn't be even be able to compile your Java application. So the JDK is a combination of the JRE and some additional tools that assist you as a developer to be able to run your Java code during the development. So for people who are not developers of the Java application, they are not interested in the JDK tools. They just want the JRE, which is the production environment runtime that is needed to run the Java application. So if say you're developing an application for Pick and Pay, maybe Pick and Pay don't care about the JDK. They just want the application that you've developed to run on their machine. And for that to be able to be possible, or for that to happen, there must be the JRE in that machine. There must be the JVM in that machine. So one of the tools that you'll find in the JDK that assist developers, you find Java C, which you use to compile your .java files. You have Java P, which we normally use to interrogate the bytecode to see how the bytecode looks like. You also have Java W, you have RMI, you have many other commands, tools that they give you that you can basically use to develop your Java application. So the JRE, guys, stands for Java Runtime Environment. So the JRE is an implementation of the JVM. And what's the JVM? The JVM, guys, is a specification, the standard that Oracle has put that anyone who invents or who develops their own JVM must follow. And at the end of the day, we have JRE, which is Java Runtime Environment. And that Java Runtime Environment, it's an implementation of the JVM. Why am I saying JVM is a specification? This is because we have different vendors that develops JVM. Oracle has its own JVM, and IBM has its own JVM. Although today Oracle has decided to have different versions of the JVM, the commercial version and the community version. So the community version is called JDK, open, which means it is open for the community. And normally the problem with the community version of the JVM is that you don't really get instance updates. If you encounter issues, you don't really get instant help. But if you are using the paid version of it, Oracle will always help you if you encounter any issues with it. So you might be wondering, what is the specification? Just to show you guys on the website, this is the Java JVM specification for Java 8. So this document documents everything that whoever is developing a JVM for Java 8 must follow. Everything that needs to be done to have a JVM runtime environment for Java 8 must be followed based on this specification. And why is that important, guys? Good question. It is important because this ensures that when you run your Java application, it will behave the same way across different JVMs, because we are obviously following the same specification, the same standard. Just like with networking, everything has a standard, guys. Like even us, say for us people who are living here in Africa, we have our own language, and that language has a standard. The way you communicate you follow the standard so that whoever you're communicating to can understand you. That is the basic idea behind the specification, guys. Another thing that is important to note about the JVM is that the JVM is platform independent. What does that mean? It means that the JVM recognizes the platform it is on and converts the bytecode into native machine code. Hence, Java is called a platform independent language. Let me break it down further. So, when you have your Java file running on a Windows environment, you have your JDK. You compile those Java file into bytecode, into bytecode instructions that the JVM understand. Now you want to take that bytecode and run it on another platform. It could be a Mac OS. It could be a Linux operating system. You don't need to do anything for you to be able to run that bytecode on a Linux environment. So long as there is a proper JVM inside that Linux environment. So the JVM will take that bytecode which was generated from from a Windows environment and execute it without any incompatibility issues. That is what we mean by saying the bytecode is portable. You write it on a Windows environment, you run it on a Linux or Mac OS. You write it on a Mac OS, you compile it on a Mac OS, you run it on a Windows or a Linux environment. But of course, there must be some compatibility points to note at this point. That if you compile your Java file with Java 5, then you must also have Java 5 on the destination machine where you're going to, the target machine where you're going to run that bytecode. Because if you try to run bytecode that was generated by Java 5 on a Windows machine, and you run it on say perhaps on a Java 8 or Java 9, there's a likelihood that you will have a compatibility issues. You will get messages like cannot run a Java code that was compiled on by an old Java on a new version of Java. Things like that. So those are some of the things that you must be careful when you're running your Java code, compatibility issues. Another thing that we have to know is how is Java language evolved. So we did mention previously that we did mention the word specification. So Java language is evolved through two things, JSR and JCP. So what is JSR? JSR is a specification request. It's a document that outlines the standard that needs to be followed when a specific environment, platform, or a specific tool is being created. Let's say in the case of a JVM, we saw that JVM has its own document specification. As you can see, guys, it's 604 pages that outlines the standard that whoever is implementing the JVM has to follow. So there are many other standards that that we can talk about specification request. Like I said, specification request, it's a document, guys, that outlines the standard that needs to be followed. So the next question would be, who creates the JSR? So the JSR, guys, are created by the JCP, which is the Java Community Process. So the JCP is a committee, or it's a member, it's a group of people who are responsible for evolving the Java language. And how do they do that? They generate the JSR. They vote for features to be implemented. They vote for features to be resolved, to be deprecated, to be added, to be removed, stuff like that. So when such things happen, the voting is done, then they generate the JSR, which is the Java specification request. So how are those members? How do they join that JSR JCP? So for independent people, that means you are not in any organization. You apply on the website. Here is the website. Uh, you apply here, then they will review application, then they will accept you based on the criteria they use. For big organizations like Oracle, Pivotal, Netflix, Microsoft, IBM, for them to become part of the JCP, they pay their membership. Then they become part of the JCP. So one of the specification requests that I can talk about is the JPA. So the JPA is also another specification that the standard that needs to be followed by by those who write the Java persistent API implementation. And good enough, we have many vendors for JPA. You have Oracle, no, sorry, you have Hibernate, you have Eclipse Link, you have OpenJPA, Ibatis, and many other implementations. So what is good about this, or what makes Java to be competitive, is the fact that we have those Java specification requests, and we have many vendors that compete to come up with the best implementation of the specification. That is why for JVM we have many vendors. We have IBM as a vendor for JVM, we have Oracle as a vendor, and many other vendors. For JPA, we have Hibernate, we have Eclipse Link, we have Ibatis, we have OpenJPA, we have many other vendors who provide the implementation. That makes Java to be competitive and to be so innovative as we see today. So recently, Oracle just released Java 15. It came with many good features. So guys, as we go on with our lessons, we will try to look at the history of Java in terms of their version, from the time Java 1 was released till the current version. So thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and please don't forget to subscribe. This will help me to even make more video tutorials on Java. Thank you guys. See you in the next video tutorial.